Morning everyone, Boker Tov, Chazak Baruch for making the minyan. So just continuing with the halachot of starting things before Shabbat that are continuing into Shabbat, and the Ramah says things that have a shmahat kol, that have a sound to it, ideally one should not do unless it's a real tzorech. So the case in the Shulchan Aruch was a case of a mill and water, and now there's noise. You put your grain before Shabbat, and now it's automatically over Shabbat being crushed. Shulchan Aruch's okay with that. The Ramah says because there's a sound to it, you're like, oh, the mill is going on Shabbat. What's going on over here? And it could lead to things. The Shulchan Aruch's not worried about that. And we gave a case that an example of let's say soldiers that they have off and they get home right before Shabbat and they have to leave right once it's Shabbat, so they need their clothes to get clean, so they throw the stuff into the wash right before Shabbat, and now on Shabbat for the next hour, 2 hours, there's a sound going on. So the Shulchan Aruch's okay with that, and the Ramah says that tzorech, then he would be okay with that as well. So similarly would be a case if let's say there's for the dryer or for a dishwasher, if it would be really a case of a tzorech. Well, according to Shulchan Aruch, even not a case of a tzorech. But with this, there's also the flip side where things that one might think, let me leave the TV on and let it stay the whole day, right? So this is not to be done, as it's a zilzul for Shabbat. It's degrading Shabbat, and it's also it could lead to chilul Shabbat because you want maybe a different channel, you want to higher the volume, whatever. It could lead to the person does this. It could be definitely marit ayin because it's not the way things are done, and people could see that. And certainly he says that if let's say it's in Israel, chas v'shalom, then if it's if it's a radio or a TV that the station is run by Jews, then you're enhancing that chilul Shabbat as well. So that's not good. But he says, the Rav Ovadia writes that in a time of war, there might be instructions to leave the radio on in order to hear that to run here, go there. So in those situations, to leave the radio on, he says, cover it with smichot, cover it with blankets, and then when you hear azaka, so then take off the blankets, and then you can hear what we need to do. Should we run somewhere? Should we this? So there's more flexibility for pikuach nefesh in a time of war. A person shouldn't set up a video camera to go on Shabbat, or let's say you put a video camera here, so we'll record, and then once it's Shabbat, we'll put on YouTube the Shabbat services or the Shabbat drasha or things like that. That's not to be done. Or set up a microphone from before Shabbat. We'll light it before we put it on before Shabbat. And it's going to be on. No, not to be done. This is a zilzul of Shabbat. And last thing, if a person let's say has a hearing aid, so hearing aids, so you should put on the hearing aid. How does it work if a person wants to put hearing aid on Shabbat? So put his hearing aid on before Shabbat, leave it on, and then you could put it on your ears, and it's not a problem. And even if that person is the one reading the Torah or things like that, it's also not a problem. Again, just make sure that it's on from before Shabbat. Okay, that's that. With these halachot, we'll continue B'ezrat Hashem tomorrow. A few announcements. First is we have a rabbi here, Rabbi El Harari. He's come a few times from Bet Shemesh. He's a collected for a kolel in Bet Shemesh that has 30 avrechim. So if anyone can help the kolel, that'll be greatly appreciated. Also, as I wrote on the chat, unfortunately, our good friend Raphael, he hasn't been here for a couple months, tending to his wife, and his wife passed away yesterday. Very, very sad. The funeral is today at 11 a.m. at Pardes Chaim. 11 a.m. graveside at Pardes Chaim for Mr. Anshelevich's wife, Raya Anshelevich, Alah Shalom. Minichat tonight at 7:05. Have a good day, everyone. Tana Develiel.